Hi, you're listening to the Bookkeepers Podcast, sponsored by Xero. I'm Jo Wood.
And I'm Zoe Whitman. Join us and our incredible guests for insider knowledge from successful bookkeepers, business experts, and thought leaders.
We are on a mission to build a more confident bookkeeping community. Our bookkeepers are happier, have more freedom, and earn more. Join us every week and we will show you how.
Hi and welcome to the Bookkeepers Podcast. I'm Zoe Whitman. I'm joined by Jo Wood and Caroline Hobden from Accountex.
Hello.
Hi Caroline, how are you?
Amazing, had a great day. Thank you so much.
Well, we're here at the Bookkeepers Summit and we obviously had to take the opportunity to have a chat with Caroline. But do you want to start by telling us a little bit about your background and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the Portfolio Director for Accountex. That includes 2 of the UK events in London and Manchester. We've got virtual events as well. We've got a news platform. And we've got some international global shows as well. Spain particularly comes under my portfolio, which is very exciting. And we've also got Accountex Canada, which I know you guys know a lot about as well. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so last week Zoe and I had the opportunity to go and take our bookkeeping voices over the massive pond to Canada, and we were just discussing that it's really interesting that we feel like it's a really small world in some instances, but a completely different profession over in Canada. So one of the things we noticed is that about 70% of the attendees classed themselves as bookkeepers. And then the rest were CPAs, which is very different to London. What would you say is the mix in London?
Oh, so London is very different, and you're right, every country we seem to go into, there seems to be a very different mix-up. There seems to be very different ways in which everyone does business. So it's really fascinating. I think in London, we're starting to record this more. It sounds crazy, but we've never actually been asking people, are you an accountant or bookkeeper? We've just started doing it. So I think it's something like 15% of our audience did put themselves down as bookkeepers at the last London event. We're hoping to see that grow because we love the community. We absolutely love working with you. And the same goes across the world. It's all very different wherever you go. So hope to see those numbers increase.
So you've just come back from Spain as well, Accountex Spain, and so do you see bookkeepers represented in Spain as well?
It's not as big a thing in Spain, and it's really interesting. Having spoken to you just now, I feel like this is something that I need to go back and do a lot more research on and find out more about it. But again, they do things very differently over there. But this show, a bit like the Canadian show, both of them have been going for 3 years. They've just had their 3rd outing. And it's grown exponentially in Madrid. I think our reg has gone up each year from something like around 70% increase on attendance each year. It's absolutely unbelievable. And at the Madrid show that we've just, again, because things are very different, they're much more intertwined with HR. And whilst there are some connections obviously over here, we actually felt the need to launch an HR Expo in Spain as well. So that ran alongside for the first time. So like I said, every country does things slightly differently, and it's just being really aware of how they do it and why they're doing it differently.
Why do you think it's growing so much? Like, what do you think it's that there's so much change? We're talking about the future today at the summit. Is it about people seeing so much technology and wanting to embrace it, or?
I think so. I think particularly with Spain, where they're probably a little bit behind the UK in terms of their technology adoption. I also think that in Spain particularly, there aren't many events. We've got so many events in the UK, incredible events that are run. And over there just aren't really that many to go to. Probably some user conferences and things like that, but nothing from a big sort of trade show standpoint. So I think that's something that's been really beneficial to us. And it's done us really well. And we've of course got the brand name that's very well known across the rest of Europe as well as internationally. So it helps.
As bookkeepers and business owners ourselves, we love Xero, cloud-based accounting software right at your fingertips.
Xero's simple, intuitive interface makes managing finances a breeze. No more number crunching or late nights. With Xero, you can focus on what you love while it takes care of the rest.
Ready to simplify your financial life? Visit Xero.com and start your free trial today.
And I think that's the thing that doesn't matter wherever you are in the world is the longing for a community, and that is what all of these shows, so they might be turning up with different ideas about where they are on their technology journey, or I mean, we spoke on stage about bots and literally saw minds blowing up. Like they there was queues afterwards, like, what is this you're talking, we don't understand. And it's really hard to gauge an audience when you're not there, and you want to go along with fresh ideas, but actually we felt we maybe were a bit too fresh, and some of them were like, this is like so beyond. And also like regulation, like the industry itself is just a completely different industry. In Canada we found that bookkeepers were people that had software accreditation. They weren't regulated. There was a professional body there, and we heard them speak, and the way they were speaking was so different to how we are spoken to by our professional bodies. Ours is a lot more supportive, and also lots of boundaries and guidelines, and you must do this, whereas it was, well, if you're not doing this, be careful because you could get in trouble. That's how it was, wasn't it? It was a lot of scaremongering.
Yeah, I felt a bit afraid to be a bookkeeper. But then, like you say, when it's not regulated, you seem to have more freedom. So it was a very interesting conversation. And then we'd have conversations with bookkeepers who'd come from America into Canada, because people had travelled. Canada is huge, obviously, and people had travelled from hours and hours away. They'd flown, we wouldn't have this in the UK. People would say, oh, Manchester, it's too far for me, I'll go to the London one, or vice versa. So obviously there's a different attitude to conferences as well. But we'd have people come from the States, and they'd say to us, well, you can't have the way that we were talking about using bots as a potential for some of the reconciliation tasks that we do in the bookkeeping practice. And over here, you can bring a bot in and you can have it for so many hours, or you could just pay like a subscription model, whereas in the USA it seemed that you couldn't do that. You'd have to actually build the software yourself. So even just to have those conversations.
$30,000 was the intro level for a bot, and we can get bots for £200 a month.
Wow.
There's massive opportunity differences, but also, like you say, mindset about the travel. Some people, it took us 8 hours to get to Toronto, but some people in Canada flew 5 hours to get to Toronto, and that wouldn't maybe necessarily happen. Would people in London think about going to the Madrid when there's only a couple of hours? We wouldn't do. It's just so different. But what we did find was that the attitude in the fact of wanting to help their business owners, the kindness, being really supportive, and wanting that opportunity to collaborate. They really liked us talking about that. It felt like a bit like in the past in this space that maybe felt like it was a bit more competition rather than collaboration, and they really liked what we were speaking about, how we were open and sharing, didn't they?
Yeah, I think so. I think that might be the future, like the future of bookkeeping. Is it about communication?
I love that. I think this space as well is just really good at sharing their stories, sharing their experience. I mean, you guys have shared so much about what you've done, and how many people has that helped. And I think you're right, maybe a few years ago, people wouldn't have done that necessarily. And I do think there's such a sense of community. And I do think our professional bodies are really supportive. From what I can see, I think they're very supportive, and they are guiding everybody. But there is that sense just of everybody wanting their fellow bookkeepers, their fellow accountants to succeed. And I really like that. I mean, I've worked in many professions that, believe me, that's not normal. Doesn't happen a lot. And then going back to your point about just going from the different countries, for example, at Accountex London, 98% of our audience will be from the UK.
Yes.
Because there is that legislation boundary. You can't travel from France and come to the UK and have the same regulations. It just doesn't happen. So there doesn't tend to be that much crossover with other countries, but it's a fantastic opportunity for us to go into those other countries and work with the people that set the legislation and bring those to that particular country in question.
We had a great conversation with Kate Hayward from Xero earlier on today, and she was talking about how when Xero are building out their software, they're looking to other countries to see what's changing in terms of regulation and legislation, or just the way of doing things. Like we were talking about e-invoicing, and maybe it had been mandated somewhere, and clearly you see things follow. It's like when we went to Canada, we would be talking about AI being built into tools. And I mean, we're seeing things like with Xero, for example, the functionality in Canada isn't quite the same yet as it is in the UK, and that's because you have to roll things out and you're going to learn from the country. So I guess you're doing that when you're thinking about shows, like you come to this, you learn a bit, you go to Spain, you see what's happening in Spain and what the conversation is.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's so funny watching, you just said that you had the Bookkeepers Base Camp in Canada, and that was an idea that we came up with in London, and it's lovely to see that. I love sharing those sorts of things. And in the Spanish show as well, they've been doing things like the Cybersecurity Hub and the LinkedIn Lounge. I mean, it's just all these things that are just, it's wonderful to share, and it's wonderful to test them out in different regions and see how they work and see how they're received. But I think anything where you are sharing knowledge, sharing expertise, and really focusing on the pain points of the bookkeepers, the accountants and the finance professionals, you're only doing a good thing, and you're only helping them in their own businesses and their own careers, and it always goes down extremely well.
It does. So the next Accountex show in the UK is Accountex London. Do you want to tell us the details about that?
So Accountex London is the longest running Accountex event. It is the flagship show. It is the largest one as well. It had, at the last event, it had over 11,000 attendees. We have over 300 exhibitors. We have 13 different stages. I mean, it really is a huge event. It's taking place on the 14th and 15th of May at London's Excel, and we really do welcome everyone. But it's not just an expo with some seminars alongside. We put a lot of care into really trying to find out what other elements that we can bring into the event that are really going to help people. We talked earlier about the Cybersecurity Hub. We talked about, the Bookkeepers Base Camp that you guys provide. There are so many other elements like that, and we're just trying to listen all the time. We have a quiet zone, for example, where if it is too much, it is an overwhelming big show. I totally understand that. So we wanted to find an area where you could go, you could detox, you could kind of de-stress and have a few moments yourself. And it's just really listening, learning from the profession, finding out what they want and bringing it into practice. It might only be a 2-day show, but so much of your experience at that show can change your future path and your future direction. So I encourage everybody to come, obviously.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for speaking to us. We've learnt loads about what's happening with Accountex around the world. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Bookkeepers Podcast. We've got lots more interviews coming up from the Bookkeepers Summit. We'll see you in another episode.
You've been listening to the Bookkeepers Podcast, sponsored by Xero. Check out our YouTube channel, join our community, the Six Figure Bookkeepers Club on Facebook, and if you love what we do, please rate and review this podcast. See you next time. Bye.